Credit cards are compounded daily. You get a monthly statement, but they're calculating interest every single day. And why are they doing that? Because it's better for them. Car loan, same thing, right? When I look at my car loan day to day, it ticks up every day of the month except the one day that I make a payment. That's because they're adding the interest in every day. Why? Because it's better for them to do that, right? They can still say the same interest rate, but they can make more money if they compound more often. All right. So that's really the end of section 9, which is the exponential section. And the last 3 sections are going to be totally focused on this financial area. I think a good scientific calculator is pretty important in terms of being able to do these calculations. There's a pretty Excel here because some of these formulas we can't even do with a calculator. We need Excel to answer the questions. And then when it comes to like managing and predicting credit card statements and balances, Excel has a lot of advantages because we do these repeated calculations, but it has to be done in sequence. And so even like going 3 months out, it's an incredible amount of work to do by hand with lots of areas and possibilities to make mistakes and rounding and things. So Excel is a great way to organize it. And these will form the basis of our Project 2 work, where we're kind of focused on the question, how much does it cost me to borrow money? So let me kind of start with that framework. So the big question is, how much does it cost to borrow X dollars? I'm being vague here because this can apply to a lot of situations. You may have a credit card and you want to purchase something now that you don't have the cash to buy. You may want to buy a car because you got a crappy rundown car. You want something that's reliable. You may want to buy a house. You may want to buy a condo. You may want to go to college and you don't have the money to pay out of pocket, so you're going to borrow the money. We live in a society where borrowing is not weird, it's the norm. Like, it's weird if you don't have to borrow money to do the things that you want to do in your life. I mean, it would be great if you didn't have to, but this is the world that we live in. Part of me thinks that it was better when we didn't have to borrow money, but borrowing money has also opened up opportunities and possibilities for people. So the reason that this is a hard question is because once you think about going to a store and buying, I don't know, something expensive, a TV. You walk into Best Buy and you want to buy a TV. You look on the shelf, you look at the TV, you look at the price tag, you see how much it's going to cost. It's not a mystery how much the TV will cost. You can look at this TV, that TV, and you say, well, this one's 800 and this one's 600, but this one's got more features, or I like that. The problem with borrowing money is that it's not transparent a lot of times. And that's, I think, partly is intentional. Like, I would like to believe nice things about banks and people who loan money, but the past has not been kind in terms of their intentionality. So when you go to borrow money, you hear things like you're going to pay 3.75% interest for this many years, but that doesn't tell you how much it's going to cost to borrow the money. And the other thing that's weird about the situation is that you essentially sign a contract or an agreement that says, I'm going to do this, I'm going to pay money back in these installments. But a lot of times you have some flexibility to do more than that, right? And you also have flexibility to do less than that, but they're certainly going to penalize you and try to slap more fees on if you don't pay what you're supposed to pay. I just had a friend who paid off a motorcycle that he bought 6 years ago, and he was fighting with the bank about how much money he had paid back and whether he had paid enough back. And it's a pretty complicated question looking back at all the statements and all the money that he paid. And he didn't always pay on time, and they were always sure to slap on a late fee. So that's the big question. That's what we're kind of get into here. And we're going to start with credit cards because credit cards are a pretty common feature that give people access to credit. And it can be tools that can be used to get you other things, cash back, miles, points for things. But they're also pretty generally high interest compared to other kinds of loans. And so you want to understand how this works, and the basic structure of a credit card payoff can be used for all kinds of loans. So it's a good place to start. So let's start with a basic scenario. I have $2,000 of credit card debt, and I have an interest rate of 13.5%, which is on the low side of kind of mediocre. It's not a terrible rate, but it's not a great rate. What does it cost me to borrow this money for a month? So credit cards are complicated because there's grace periods and, when did you spend the money? And we're kind of skipping over that just to get to the nuts and bolts. Also, I told you that credit cards were compounded daily, but we're going to pretend like this is a monthly situation just to make it easier for ourselves. So we don't have to use that crazy formula. It's going to give us an approximation, which should be good enough for, like dealing with this situation and trying to understand it. So one of the basic skills you're going to need is called the finance charge. The finance charge, we're just going to take 3 ingredients. This is how I want you to think about it. There's the APR, there's the balance, and there's divided by 12. Put that divide by symbol in there. So with those 3 ingredients, you can calculate the finance charge for a credit card, right? So you have a credit card right now, you have a balance, it's generating interest. You can estimate your finance charge by just taking the balance times the APR and dividing it by 12. Why are we dividing it by 12? Because they're going to bill you monthly, and so you're taking your annual rate and you're just cutting it into 12 equal pieces. That's the way it works, approximately. So in this situation, what'd you get for the finance charge? That's how much it costs to borrow money for a month. At 13.5%, $2,000 debt, how much is it costing me to have that debt? Okay, got a number? Or do you need more clarity about what I mean by the 3 ingredients?
Yeah, what do you do with them?
We're going to multiply. So we're going to take 2,000 times, now 13.5%, of course, is 13.5 divided by 100. So I'm going to write it out as its decimal, 0.135. And then I'm going to divide by 12. So I'm multiplying the balance of the APR and I'm dividing by 12. Those are the 3 ingredients that you need to calculate the finance charge. Okay, so what do you got?
$2,189.17.
Doesn't sound right. It's a finance charge going to be relatively small compared to the size of the debt.
22.5.
There you go, 22.5. Okay, so 2,000 times 0.135 and then divided by 12. That's the way that you would calculate finance charge. Okay, so it's costing me $20 to borrow that amount of money for a month. And if I could pay, if I suddenly get a big paycheck or stimulus or something and I can pay it all off, at the end of the month, I would have to pay $2,022.50, and then I would pay the whole debt off. Now, generally, people who get into credit card debt aren't in a position to do that, so they have to pay it off monthly, and that's where we're headed next. But let's just get some more practice with the finance charge, just to make sure everybody feels good about that, because that's really foundational to this whole part. Finance charge practice. So I'm going to give you, really, you just need two things, the balance and the APR. And I want you to put those together and figure out the finance charge. Okay, so let's say we have a $500 balance, but we've got a 29.8% APR. Let's say we have a $3,000 balance and we have an 18.9% APR. Let's say we have a $1,200 balance and we have a 9.75% APR. Okay. So I want you to figure out the finance charge. 3 ingredients, APR balance divided by 12. Remember to treat the APR as a decimal, not as a percentage. 1242.
The next one I got 47.2.
Good. Now, in this case, I would say don't round to the nearest dollar, because these financial institutions are going to wring every penny out of you that they can get. So go all the way to the cent and 9.75. Okay. So that's a finance charge calculation. That's the foundation of what we need to be able to do. Now, where we want to go is we want to do something more complex, like Ben has $3,000 of credit card debt at 14.24% APR, and he is going to make payments of $200 per month. Where will he be after 3 months? Now, roughly speaking, we could make some predictions, right? If I make 3 months of payments, I will have paid $600, and so I would be around $2,400, but that doesn't include the finance charges that I have to pay every month. So I could work out the finance charge, multiply by 3, and kind of get an approximation of where I would be. But what we actually want to do is we want to, and you're going to be forced to do by hand, is build a table. And this is really where Excel starts to kick in. So the table looks like this. You got a balance column, you got a finance charge column, you got a new balance column, then you have your payment column, and from there it wraps around and you repeat. Probably start over here with the month column. So month 0, my balance is 3,000, my finance charge, and by the way, when you do the homework for this section, feel free to do this in Excel. So go ahead and do the finance charge calculation. All the information you need is in the table, plus some extra stuff, but focus on what you need. 3 ingredients, balance, APR, divide by 12.
At $35.60.
Sounds reasonable. One of the cool things about Excel is you can actually write the percentage as a percentage. Just don't forget the percentage sign. Divide by 12. Okay, nice. Now, new balance just is the consideration that if I borrowed $3,000 and I'm now having to pay this fee, I have to put these numbers together. So now I have a balance of $3,035.60. My payment is set to be $200. And so now I'm ready to move into month 1, where I've made the full month. I had to pay some fees, that's the finance charge, for borrowing the money in the first place. But then I made a payment. So my balance went up, now it's going to go back down. So what do I need to do here to get my new starting point? It's not going to be 3,000. It's not going to be 2,800.
You're going to subtract the 200
From what?
From the new balance.
New balance, good. sometimes people make the mistake to go back to the original, but then that skips over the finance charge. You want to take the finance charge into account. So we just took away the 200 from the 3,035.60. All right, I'm going to change all these into dollar signs, and then we can proceed. Now, the beautiful thing with Excel and autofill is once I've done these as formulas with cell references, I can do all of this very quickly, but I'm going to torture you and make you do this part by hand for now, because you will have to do this. Now, there is a good example in the book where you can practice this. They've got some checkpoints along the way. This one's slightly easier because I'm not bringing in the minimum payment concept. I'm just saying we're going to make a $200 payment each time. So your job is to calculate the finance charge, the new balance, and then repeat the loop. Just to give you a place to check in, finance charge should be less and my new balance should be less, because compared to what it was the month before, it's smaller now. You're welcome to send me a text and check in. I want you to see if you can get to that line right here. This is the bingo box first. I'm going to go ahead and use autofill here. Show you how beautiful this is. Bang. Bam. Boom. Yep. Now, this one really should be, this is where Excel can get you in a little bit of trouble rounding. It's a penny off, because if you look at 25 plus 68, it should be 93 here. So this, I'm just going to change to 2,793. And then this is the same. Bring it down. Boom. That's it. So you got 2,593. That's exactly right. If you're off by a penny here or there, you know, it's just a rounding thing. Pay attention, make a note to yourself. The rounding, got to go to the hundredths place, got to look at the next number, and that happens over and over again because you're doing the calculations. I mean, really happens in the finance charge section. Now, we're going to take it up a notch. We would have to take into consideration a minimum payment, because often banks will describe to you a minimum payment that's based on a percentage. So instead of just paying $200 a month, we might pay 5% a month. So just to give you a sense of what that looks like, and I'm going to go ahead and just copy this and paste it so that I have most of what I need. The structure, let's say I have $8,000 of debt, 10.24%, and I'm going to make minimum payments of 3%. Okay, so let's get you to the part that's different here. First of all, I've got to fix this because I'm not doing 14% anymore. I'm doing 10.24%, but everything else is the same. Multiplying the balance times 10.24% divided by 12. So it's about a $68 finance charge. So my new balance is this much. So when I go to calculate the payment, that's where it goes different. So 3%, how do I calculate the size of the payment? Now, it's not just $200, it's different every month. Any ideas about how you would calculate the size of this payment? So this is another good example of that sub-question concept. Yeah, go ahead. You have an idea, Roger?
I'm trying to do the calculation real quick and see.
Gotcha. So I would just say, even if you restate it, like, what is 3% of 8,068.27? That's essentially a reframing of what we're asking here with this payment. We're trying to figure out the payment, but
So I'm
it's
gonna
based,
multiply it.
Oh, 92.0.
good. Okay, so let's take this number and multiply it by 0.03. Not 92.
I think that might have gone off. Did something else.
Yeah. So what's important is that the 3% is not of this balance over here, but the new balance, including the finance charge. The balance of the finance charge makes the new balance. Take 3% of that, and that gives you that payment. Then I can go from there. Now, you're going to have plenty of time to practice this. I would recommend this problem. I gotta get to the credit card.
Okay, yeah, I put it in my calculator a little wrong.
This one. This is a 135, I think, and it's got some check-ins for you, but this is basically a good example of what you're going to have to be doing in a test situation. Now, I want to turn to the Excel part of this because to me, that's really the important part. You're not going to be doing these calculations by hand in real life. You may do these calculations in real life because you may find yourself in debt and want to get out of it and have some questions about how much is this loan going to cost me, right? I got myself into $8,000 of credit card debt and now I need to get out of it. I got a 10.24% APR. What you control is really this number over here. You can make different payments and it'll turn out differently. And I want to show you how Excel can be used to analyze that. Okay, so first of all, I need to keep going with this, right? If I make 3% payments, this will go down, this will go down, this will go down. I'm doing that autofill thing. So I'm selecting the box, going to the bottom right corner, and I'm clicking and I'm dragging. Okay. Now I can keep doing this. And in fact, I don't have to do it one at a time. I can select all three of these because all three of them have formulas. And I go to the bottom right corner, I click in and drag, and boom, I got a new one. And in fact, I can do all four of these because all four of these have formulas. And I can click and I can drag, and that gives me 4 new calculations. And in fact, I can do 5 of these because this is a pattern over here. Now, because it's a pattern which is increasing, I would select 2 because I want Excel to see this is 3, 4, and then it'll predict the next one is 5. Okay? So you can see I'm starting to build a table just using autofill, and I'm not doing any math, right? I set this up one time at the very top. I did my percent calculation. I got my new balance, which is addition. I got my payment, which is 3%, and I'm just letting it run from there. Now, I don't have to do it one row at a time. I can do 10 more rows. Or however many rows that is, right? And I can figure out how long this is going to take me to pay off. Now, I'm not going to do it with 3%. The problem with 3% is that I keep paying less. And because I'm paying less, it's going to take me longer and longer to do it. So at some point, I'm going to say, no, forget it. I'm changing over to $200. And I'm just going to keep paying $200. And I can use that to figure out how much longer is this going to take, right? So let's just do some rough calculations and see what Excel tells us. If I owe $5,000 and I'm going to pay $200 a month, how long is it going to take me to pay it off, approximately? This is a good place for a simpler, similar problem. Like, how long would it take if I didn't pay any interest? $5,000, $200 a month. What if I didn't have to pay any interest for some reason? Bank's just going to be nice. What calculation would you do to figure out how many months I would have to pay $200 to pay off $5,000?
I mean, with the 200 like times a year.
Okay, so 200 times 12 would be about $2,400.
2,400, right? So then,
So it's about 2 years, it sounds like, right?
yep.
All right. And 2 years is how many months?
24.
24.
months, right. Right. Another way to think about it is your $5,000 divided by 200 would be 25 months. That's how many months it would take to pay it off if I didn't have 25 more months, because I know that's going to take me at least that long. Kind of lost track of where I was there. So there we go. And there we go. Now these parentheses are indicators that I've gone into the negative. So these are months that I don't need. And this last month, I don't have to pay $200. How much do I owe? I mean, unless I want to give the bank some of my money for free. What's left on my balance according to this line? Remember, this column is the balance. This column is the finance charge, then the new balance. So what's my last payment need to be? Oops.
$136.07.
Right, because that's the balance, but the last little finance charge. So when I pay this, then my next row will be 0 and I'm done. Okay. It's only at this point, when I built this whole complicated table, that I can answer the question, how much did it cost me to borrow the money and pay it back in this way, right? $8,000, 10%, but it was really complicated because it went up and it went down and it went up and it went down, and it took me almost 4 years to pay it off like this, starting off with 3% payments and then eventually buckling down and doing $200 a month. How much did it cost me to borrow all that money? How can I use Excel to help me answer that question? Here's the whole table.
Wouldn't you have to add together like the entire column C?
Exactly, because column C are basically fees that the bank charged, right? It wasn't the $8,000. I mean, again, if grandma had lent me $8,000, I could have just paid her back $8,000. That's 40 payments of $200 a piece. But since it was the bank, they were charging me money. Well, I got a tool for that. It's called sum. Go to column C. I put in all of the numbers that I need. Boom. And there it is. There's the price tag. Okay. This is what I mean. When you go to Best Buy and you buy TV, you see the price tag. But think of how much work we had to do to get to the price tag. But the very important thing is that I have some control here, because if I get myself into debt and then I've got some steady income and I can start paying it back, I could make a difference. I could pay, so I don't like this number. This seems like $1,700. I don't want to have to pay the bank $1,700 on top of the $8,000. I want to pay less. How do I accomplish that? I pay more every month, right? So I could go here and I could say, well, let's redo this situation, but let's think about paying it off differently, right? So I copy this. This is one of the reasons I wanted you to do an Excel for that big copy and paste and then kind of use the structure. So I'm going to change this question. I'm going to make minimum payments of $250. Forget where am I going to be after 3 months. I'm answering a real life question here. How much interest am I going to have to pay? Okay, so to answer this question, this is not a test question. This is a real life question. You would not ever be asked to do this in a test. I'm making my payments $250. The rest of it can stay the same because it's based on the finance charge and adding up the balance in the finance charge. So all that's staying the same. And all I have to do now is run it out. Okay, not there yet. Not there yet. Getting close. 3 more. Almost. Last payment needs to be how much?
$133.45.
Exactly. Okay, and then the important question is here, sum. So I think it starts at C6. I'm going to use the C7 is the first one. So back in this formula, I can either, highlight everything or I can type it out. C7 to C44, add up all those numbers. Okay, so how much money did I save myself by being a little more aggressive? I started off paying $1,700 of interest. Now I'm down to $1,380. $350 probably saved. And a lot of this really came out of my own personal experience and being heavily in credit card debt in my late 20s and using Excel to kind of build tables and understand where I wanted to put my resources to pay things off, and then using the savings concept that I know I'm in debt, I'm gonna have to pay the bank's money, but if I can do this a little bit faster, if I can make a little bit bigger of a sacrifice to pay off the debt, then I can save myself some money. And that was enough motivation to, maybe buckle down over here or eliminate this cost over here so that I could put more money to the debt to get out of it. That's one of the big tools that I want to give you in this section, is just understanding how Excel can help you understand you're in debt. What do you do about it? What can you do about it? How much is it costing you to be in debt and be paying it off under your current plan? Or, what if you make changes? And those aren't easy questions to answer. So that's why this table is so important. What you're going to need to do from an academic standpoint is do a couple of rows of this. I think probably 3 rows, and be able to do that by hand. So you want to be comfortable with that concept. And again, this page here, 136, 135, that's a good one to practice on. The setup stuff is on the page before, the APR and the minimum payment amount. And again, all of these book problems have Becky support videos that come along with them. Okay, let me see. Any questions about that stuff? Technical questions, but also just conceptual questions. I know it's a lot to think about. And how relevant it is, really depends on where you are personally financially. A lot of times you can't even think about getting out of debt until you come up with a plan for having excess money to put towards the debt. And that really depends on employment, and this is a difficult time for that. Okay, I just want to check my goals here. All right. I want to make a separate video to talk a little bit about credit scores, because they do talk about the beginning of section 10. I think it's a conversation that a lot of people demonstrate interest in,